The notes on 6.2 are going to be done on the worksheet, so you can download that and print it. If you don't have a printer, you can use your notebook, your binder paper, to take some notes on the different types of scatter plots today. So we're looking at bivariate data, scatter plots, and correlations. So our first definition is let me pick a color that you can actually see. A scatter plot is a graph of ordered pairs that represents data. Okay, so a scatter plot is a graph of ordered pairs that represents data. Each of the ordered pairs gives information about two variables. So if we're working on two variables, we're going to have an x and a y, just like we're used to having. And the study of two related variables is called, here's our new term, bivariate. Bivariate data analysis. Plotting the points from a bivariate data set on a scatter plot can show if there is an association between the two variables that is not easily seen in a table. So an association. Okay, so some other terminology that you need to know is correlation and trend line. So a correlation, we're going to see what that looks like. So a scatter plot can show a trend or relationship between the two variables. This relationship is called an association or a correlation. And then let's look at trend line and see exactly what that is. A trend of the data is modeled by a straight line through the data points. The trend line is used to describe the relationship shown on a graph. So we're going to look at a few examples to see what this really looks like. So let me scooch this up and you can look on your paper there in front of you. So we have three different examples at the bottom. We have a positive correlation, we have a negative correlation, and no correlation. So look and see that all these plotted points on the positive correlation still make a line that kind of goes upward. On the negative correlation, it goes downwards, and then in no correlation, they're kind of scattered all over the place, so we don't know where they are. So let's first look at the positive correlation. So as the x values, should be x values, increase, the y values also increase. So as we go further this way for our x values, they're going to increase in the y values this way. Okay, so our trend line, if we drew a line that is the best fit here, it goes up, it's a positive correlation, like a positive slope, so it's going to go upward, just like a positive slope. The negative correlation is going to look similar as the x values increase. So as we go this way for our x values, the y values are actually going to decrease and go smaller for our y values. So we have a trend line that is negative in this case. So they go, the points on the scatter point go downward. So it has a negative slope. And then for the no correlation, the data points or data points are scattered and the points show no association. Okay, there's no pattern that's happening. They're kind of all over the place for that one. So let's go ahead and look at the second page of notes and work through a couple examples. So we have example 1. So in example 1, it says comparing the numbers of pages in a paperback book and the price of the book. So we have a table there. The number of pages is going to be our X value, and our Y value is going to be the total price. So number 1 says create a graph and label the X and Y axis. X is going to represent the number of pages. Y is going to represent the total price. Okay, in money, in dollars. All right, so let's go ahead and do that. So we have our X-axis over here. We have our Y-axis here. Our X is going to be the number of pages, and our Y is going to be the total price. Okay, so there's number 1. Number 2, graph the data from the table. All right, so to do that, we need to plot our points. I'm going to go over that with a different color so we can see what we're doing here. All right, so for the first one, the number of pages was 350, and the total price is $2.25. So we're going to go over to 350, which would be right here, and up to 25 is right there in between. The next one is 200 and 175. The third one is 130. Okay, this one's going to be a little bit trickier because there's 100 and 150. So 130 is kind of a little more than half, and up to 125. The next one is 450 and up to 3. Then we have 180. So there's 150, 60, 70, 80, about here, up to 2. Then we have 50 and 1, and then 250 and $2.50. This is right here. Okay, so we have all of our points plotted now. The last thing you're going to do is draw a trend line and interpret the data. Okay, so our trend line, if you have a ruler or a piece of paper, I'm going to use a clear ruler so you can see what I'm doing. I'm just going to line up my ruler. My trend line is kind of following those points. It doesn't have to hit all of them, but it could hit some. But notice how my trend line goes upward. Okay, so the data, the trend line shows an upward trend. That's going upward. Therefore, the data represents a positive correlation. As the number of pages increases, the total price of the book increases. This means that the more pages in a book, the more it costs. Okay, so at this point, go ahead and pause the video and see if you can do example 2 on your own, and then you can play it and see if you get it correct. Okay, so you should have had time to go ahead and look through example 2 and see how you did. So let's see if yours matches up to mine. So we have our X and our Y coordinate. Again, we're going to create a graph and label the X-axis and the Y-axis. X is going to be the hours watching TV. And Y represents the hours spent outside. Okay, so let's go ahead and label that. So we have our X. Here's our hours watching TV. Oops, watching. And hours spent outside. There's our Y. And then we're going to go ahead and graph the data from the table. So we have 2 hours watching TV is 1 hour spent outside. A half hour watching TV is 3.5 hours outside. 1.5 watching TV is 1.5 outside. 1 watching TV is 2.5. 2.5 is 1.5. 1.5 is 2, and 3 is a half. All right, so I have those plotted, and then we can see by drawing our trend line lost my train of thought, that this is going to go kind of a downward trend following those lines. So we're looking for points that are, some of them are going to be above, some are going to be below, but it kind of has this pattern. Okay, so it shows a downward trend. So it's going downward. Therefore, the data represents a negative correlation. As the hours of TV watched increases, the hours spent outside decreases. This means that the more TV watched, the less time spent outside. Okay, so you're going to continue working through homework that deals with the different trend lines and making scatter plots and interpreting this week. And then next week, we'll be able to actually write equations for our trend lines. So this week, it's just looking at the trends and knowing which is which.